HTML provides two distinct display modes, block and inline. Let's start by looking at inline elements. I make a working copy of inline.html and rename the copy to inline-working.html. I'm going to open that in my text editor. You can see it's just a paragraph of lorem ipsum, and in the middle of that is an image tag that will display a small picture of a rock, inline. And so this is called inline mode. And I'm going to go ahead and reduce the width of this, and I'm going to turn on wrapping there. And we'll open it also in the browser using Firefox. So we can see both of these side by side. And there you can see in the browser, there's the image in line with the paragraph. So it flows with the paragraph. You see it's a little taller than the characters in the paragraph, and so it makes some space for itself. But because the image element is an inline element, it just flows with the text, and that's what inline means. Inline elements are elements that flow inline with text. There are other examples of inline elements. For example, we can come in here and we can make a link. I'm just going to take this word palentesque and make it a link. It's not linking to anything, but if I save that and reload in the browser, you see that that is now a link, and my cursor changes when it hovers over it. So the A element for creating links is also an inline element. The B and I elements are inline, so I'm going to make this bold here. That's a container. And I'm going to make this part here italic with an I element. And save that and come over here and reload. And you see there's our bold and there's our italic. So those are also inline elements, and they flow with the text. It's possible to change an inline element to a block display. If I come in here to the image and move this down to the next line, I'm going to say style equals, and I'm going to say display block, and that changes the display mode of this element to block mode. If I save that and reload, you'll notice that that image is now on a line by itself. It actually interrupts the paragraph because a block mode element is not allowed inside a paragraph. A paragraph can only have inline elements. And so because the browser sees that block element, it ends the paragraph, and then it starts another paragraph after it. So now that it's a block element, let's go ahead and bring in a bigger picture of the rock. If I take out dash small there, I'll get a bigger picture. I'll save that and reload, and there's a bigger picture of the rock. And now I can actually make that float to the right and have the text wrap around it. By inside of my style here, I just say semicolon and float colon right. And I can terminate that with another semicolon, and I come over here and reload. And now you see that it floats to the right and the paragraph wraps around it. That's because I have this float right and it's in block mode. So if you have an image or another inline level element that you want to treat as block level, it's possible to do this. And it's not an uncommon thing to do. Now let's take a look at an example of a block level element. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this, and I'm going to close that, and we'll come over here to block.html. And I'll make a working copy, and I'll block-working.html, open that in my text editor. We can see that here we have, instead of paragraphs, we have divs, and there's one div, an outer div here. And if I collapse that, you'll see that that goes all the way down to the body. So it ends here. In the middle of that div is another div. And this is why I'm not using a paragraph here, because a div is allowed to have other divs and other block level elements inside of it. A paragraph's not allowed to do that. And so there's a div in the middle and an outer div and a bunch of lorem ipsum in each part of that. And so we'll go ahead and we'll shrink this and turn on soft wrap. I'm going to go ahead and open that in my browser. And you can see I've highlighted this middle div in yellow, and you can see that it says div style background :yellow. And that makes it highlight it like this in yellow. So div is a block level element, and this is an unusual usage of div. And normally we would use paragraphs for this, but because we're just demonstrating block level elements, it's just a convenient way to do that. And we have this div in the middle of the divs, and so you see that it takes up a vertical space by itself. Block level elements take up vertical space. They don't just flow with things, they take up vertical space. Like I changed the image to block level, I can do the same thing with div. I can change this to inline level. Within the style sheet, I can say semicolon, display, colon, inline, semicolon, and save that. And when I reload, you see now it's flowing with the text. So it's no longer taking up vertical space, it's taking up inline space. It just flows with the text, right like that with the rest of the text, as you would expect, say, of an image or a link or a bold or something. So if I undo this, and I'm just pressing Command-Z on this Mac or Control-Z on a PC to undo that, and I'm going to change this instead. I'm going to say span instead of div. So span is like div, but it's inline. I save that and reload over here. You see it's still inline like that. If I change this back to div, it'll now be block level. Save and reload. Now it's block level again. So div is naturally a block level element and span is naturally a inline level element. So I can take this div and I can float it to the right. I can say float : right. And I also need to give it a width that's smaller than the width that's there. So if I say width : 100 pixels, now it'll be 100 pixels wide and it'll float to the right, and you see all the other text wraps around it, just like we did with the image. So block level elements take up vertical space. They're designed to contain other block and inline level elements. The exception to that is paragraphs. Paragraphs cannot contain other block level elements. Inline level elements flow with text. They're designed to flow and to contain other inline level elements that also flow. We'll see more examples of block and inline elements as we go through the rest of the course.